Ladies and gentlemen, we are back. Back for another episode of the Draxx Life Podcast, where we'll chat about some of the weird and the wondrous. Let's get to the show.
So I come home, get the keys to the door, and then on my countertop, once again, people, salute, we're back mid-story. And there's yellow rice and beans. So not like habichuelas, not the big beans, the gandule, the smaller beans.
Yeah, I like the tiny beans. Yeah.
Yeah, the tiny beans. And so do I. I prefer that as well. And then we have the bacalao, which is codfish with onions, red onions, avocado, peppers, and a boiled egg, like cut up and sliced. So what you do is you heat up the rice, and then you put all that on top of it, and you just mix it together in a bowl. Oh God, I just ate it for breakfast. That's how good it was. But it's not good for the weight gain. You know what I'm saying? Because
I mean, it's good for the weight gain.
it is good for
trying to get beefy.
If you're trying to bulk up, it is good.
But if you're trying to get lean and mean, then
it's
you're
so
at a
delicious.
disadvantage.
It's so damn delicious. So I actually had a smaller bowl for breakfast this morning. I usually don't even eat breakfast, but it's just too good. It's too good. This is the problem, man. You just come home and it's just there for you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good problem to have. Honestly, let's be real.
Yeah. Remember that line from The Wire? Marlowe, good. He's like, this sounds like one of them good problems. Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, that is one of the nice things is like, when you live in a family home, like where you have you're like in a family home, multi-generational.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like, dude, food. Like, come on now. Like,
This
that
food
is one of the
it
distinguishing characteristics between like living by yourself, unless you're just like a foodie who cooks and stuff like that. But like,
Yeah,
when
you're
you're
right.
home,
That's a
when
good
you
point.
got some grandparents, some aunts in the house,
Yeah.
they're just making good stuff all the time.
It's just
This is why people, like, if you look around, people gain weight. When you got the family, you're not lean and mean.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my life. But like you said, it's like heavy is the head. They were warning Marlowe. He's like, whoa, if you have the crown, because he was trying to be the kingpin drug dealer in Baltimore and The Wire. He's like, if you have the crown, people are coming for you. And he's like, nah, sounds like a good problem. I want to be the king. I want to be the king. So that was
dude, it is funny though, like, because before we hit record, you're right. Like, you could have a bad day, but if you come home and there's just something good to eat, it does make the day better.
Yeah,
we are animals. Like, seriously. Like, if someone comes home and I don't know, like, they got something at work that they brought home and it's just like a sweet treat or something delicious, dude, it just changes. It changes the game so quickly.
Yeah, and it's also high quality. She's so good. It's high quality, and everything is fresh, homemade, Puerto Rican style, baby. That's how we do it in the Bronx.
Yeah, that's nice. Yeah. That's why employers, man, they do the buy lunch for everyone, and it's like it is like drugs, right? Because it does. It's like such an easy thing. It costs them nothing, and then it like makes everyone happy. Like, dude, when we worked at the Apple years and years and years ago, on those rare occasions when they catered, few and far between, don't matter how bad your day was, when you went downstairs and there was like tacos or something, like, boom, that whole previous experience was just wiped away.
Yeah, no, you're right, Joe. Did they ever do that in the later years? I know they were way more generous when we all were there together.
They did, but more so like little snacks. Stuff to get us all like sugared up.
Buy-in.
Yeah.
Like those little cupcakes, you go there and you'd be
like, pass.
They're like, whoo, eat like 5 of them. Oh man.
Because I remember we did it overnight. Joe, I don't know if you've ever did you ever do operations overnight? Yeah.
I've done it a couple of times early on when they would give us like pizza.
Well, they'd straight up cater it. They would usually do like food.
Yeah, that's where I was just exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. Where that's like a legit meal. I don't want cookies and cupcakes. Nah.
Because I think I did at least 2 of them, and like whoever they delegated the responsibility of like picking the food, probably like a meal or something. it was like straight.
We
up
know
restaurant.
who she is. She's cool.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they were like not doing pizza. Maybe once they did pizza, but then I think someone complained and they were doing like, I think they did like a barbecue night and they did like I don't know, one of the taco places. They actually did a pretty good job. I kind of
Joe and I have an epic story with that person. I'm not gonna tell it today.
God.
Yeah,
you're not gonna tell that story any
at the
day.
at the Brass Monkey. Yeah. That's
Oh,
I'll just leave it there. I'll just leave it there.
God.
Don't get too wild, people. It's not that. It's not
Dangerous.
what you're thinking. Yeah, but it's funny.
Brass Monkey is a bar, so that does limit to some degree what
It was in pub. It was publicly. Yeah, it happened in public.
Oh man,
And packed bar, by the way.
Yeah. Well, hey guys, dude, good to see you. Happy to be here with you today. We got to do before we get into the main meat of the episode. Right now, we're toying around with the sides.
Mm-hmm.
We got to pick a day in coming up where we do let's record live.
Oh yeah,
not live in front of an audience, obviously, but like let's be in the same room, having a beer, sipping on coffee or whatever, and like let's record live. Yeah. Let's make this happen. Like March. Like
in studio in person, basically.
A spot, like we all have the equipment, and let's just like get together because this is fun. This got us through COVID in many ways.
It did,
but it doesn't. If we could just do this together, I think it would be even better.
That's very serendipitous that you said that because this afternoon I ordered a new Wi-Fi card for the Mac that I could be mobile on, because obviously I'm not taking this iMac. I'm not carrying an iMac but I have my MacBook Pro. I ordered a new card for it because the card died, so I don't have internet connection, and I'm gonna repair it myself. So
the beautiful part is if
I can be mobile now.
If we meet in the world, we don't need any internet connection.
Oh yeah, no, fair. But I was talking about for the purposes of recording.
Perfect. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. So
all right, wait. Go ahead.
No. So I'll have like a operating machine that's mobile instead of a desktop. That changes everything.
You need to get yourself like at some point like a truck where they do like recon. Like if they have like the CIA, that should become your vehicle. Like. You know what I'm talking
about? Like an unmarked van?
With the door that slides open.
Yeah,
and it's just you. It's just you, like in a beanbag. But that's your car of choice.
Yeah, and then
when you're doing all of your like Twitter deep diving, it's like just you in a truck. You do it all in the truck.
Yeah, and actually, guess
that's your bat cave.
No, I like it.
When they start tracking you, man, you're like, I'm out. I'm moving.
We're here,
I'm going
Chris.
somewhere else.
This is guess what movie I fell asleep to last night? Just take one guess.
Sneakers. I don't know. I'm just picking up from random.
No, movie. Yeah.
I have no idea.
You kind of said it there. So we're on the same wavelength. Dark Knight
Enemy of the
Rises.
State?
Dark Knight Rises.
Oh, okay. Yes, there we go.
Dark Knight Rises when he comes back. Where he gets his back fixed. Come on.
Break. And there's like an old Russian guy doing like massage on him, getting him back into shape.
Yep.
Oh man, dude! When he falls, when he climbs up out of like the cistern, and then he falls the first time. Yeah. I still remember that. I actually moved. Like I actually felt. I was like,
yeah.
It happened.
It like arrowed you.
Yeah, hit me right in the side. Okay, enough of this. The last couple times we've started spitting, and then I hit record. So. For those of you watching, the 5, the 6, the 19.
The 9 subscribers, shout out.
Whoever they are.
Yeah.
I think they're all people that
you know. Too. Yeah.
So I'm assuming they're the same people then.
Yeah. No, Joe, Emmett, sorry. Go finish the intro.
No, I was going to say, welcome to another episode. We have Joseph Mark back in the house. You can't see him, but he is there. You hear the voice. Yeah. And he pitched this episode today, what we're going to be talking about. But before I let Joe explain it, what were you going to say, Rob, before I interrupted?
Amit, our mutual friend, sent me a screenshot of my last live video stream from last week. So we watched it. And
what would be nice is when you start to get comments from people you don't know.
I did once already, and I mudded him. I put him in the mud.
That's not how you build community.
I know.
You're actually doing the opposite of what you want to accomplish.
Fair enough. But when my channel is for calling people out, so I had to. It's like, you're going to try to. What did he say? I forgot what he said. But yeah, you're right, Chris. I went on full offense. I went on the offense immediately.
Like, invite them into the house.
Yeah,
let's not slam the door in their face.
Yeah, you're right. Fair play. Fair enough.
Your channel, do what you want to do with it. All right, Joseph. The audience can't see you, but they can hear you. And tell us what are we going to be talking about today? I don't know, Bernie Sanders wannabe.
He's a statesman, Joseph the
you
statesman.
Are. That's what I was saying. You should look at nonprofits, because I'm like, I feel like that's your calling.
I don't know about that.
Bro, you are like a man of the people. You should like focus on maybe helping the people.
But I don't want to be the face. I want to be
like, you don't have to be the face. Work behind the scenes. There's like, how many people do you know who are the face of nonprofits? There's millions of people who you will never meet or know. You can write the speech. You don't have to be the orator.
That's fair.
All right, but go ahead. Today, we're diverging again. What are we talking about today?
I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago.
Last week.
The Four Nations face-off was on. And that had me thinking about, all this talk about,
about that.
Yeah, I know. That's why I figured this would be a good topic to talk about. Yeah. It had me thinking about like nationalism and patriotism and how it affects us on a daily basis. And I know I've always had these thoughts baked into my mind, especially after 9/11. But I was just curious where you guys stood on like the net positive and the net negatives of nationalism and patriotism.
Okay, cool. So, well, first, before we get into the weeds, yes, thank you. Can we have like a general definition of what are those two things? Because I think they can get people use them and argue about them, and sometimes they're like using them interchangeably. So like when you say patriotism and when you say nationalism, like what do you mean specifically? Exactly. Like just your definition.
So I'm actually going to go with the literal definition.
Perfect.
And you're right, Chris. Most people do conflate the two. They think that one is the other.
But, so hit us with the actual, if you have it up on your screen, like hit us with the actual definition. Because I actually might, in my mind, not distinguish the two correctly myself.
So patriotism is a love and devotion for one's country, while nationalism is love and devotion to one's country above other countries.
Okay. Yeah. Splitting hairs a little bit, actually. I'm surprised those two words are in the dictionary when they're, on a good day, you could be a patriot. On a bad day, you could be a nationalist. Mm-hmm. But okay. But so you're saying, okay, and then, so in your thesis is like you think both of those are kind of like negative.
Which is rare because most people tend to swing on patriotism is good, nationalism is bad.
Yes.
But I think both are problematic.
Okay, and real quick, because then we'll kind of start to pull it apart and just riff. But like, what was the reason why you think they're both negative in the grand scheme of things?
Well, I think nationalism is kind of obvious. And this whole thing with the Four Nations contest that face off in the NHL All-Star break.
And for everyone, that's hockey. We're talking about hockey, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I maybe you don't know this. So like, there is a big hockey game, and it's like essentially Canada and the U.S. and anyone else.
I think
Sweden and Finland.
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So like, okay, go ahead, continue.
So, I mean, it's fun to watch. You get to see these rivalries pop up with these with the players, but there's a bit of rhetoric behind, like some of the fandoms, rhetoric behind the governments. And to me, it's not the most conducive to try to get like world harmony, if you get what I'm saying.
Yeah. Okay. So it creates dissension. It creates
it can
animosities. In the worst case scenario, it creates like unnecessary frictions where there might not be a friction. Does that sound like? your train of thought?
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right.
Yeah, so there's
ahead,
political. So basically, it was a hockey tournament. The first time the best players from each country faced each other since the Olympics, I believe. Oh no, since the World Cup of Hockey in 2016. So it had been 9 years since the best players from. But sadly, this was only 4 countries. So there will be more in the Olympics because all the pros are going to be able to play in the Olympics. In where is it? In Milan. Milano next year.
Italiano.
It's back in Italy. I lived in Italy when the Olympics were in Torino, so they're coming back next year. So, however, as Joe alluded to, the political undertones were Trump calling Canada the 51st state. There was like people started to say it was there's annexation that could be possible, and
booing of each other's national anthems.
Booing each other's national anthems. So there was a very, very like fervent political tinge to these two matchups between USA and Canada. But what doesn't make it a full tournament? Why people are still like we want the Olympics, because there's no Russia, which is excellent at hockey. There's no Russia. There's no Czech Republic. There's no Slovenia. There's no Denmark and Norway, all these countries that are Germany too, which are very good at ice hockey. They weren't in it. They only picked 4 specific nations. So that's why it's called the 4 Nations Face-Off, but it's not a true international tournament. However, the Trump just winning the presidency and him saying that about Canada, and then he called the team and spoke to them, USA, before the championship game. And Canada still beat us. So what are we doing here?
Yeah,
I mean, it's their game.
It's their game.
I never understood that.
Yeah, we should have won that game, Joe. I don't want to hear shit. You don't want it. We're not going to turn this into a sports thing. I did that.
I know.
One thing I will say is funny because like of the 3 of us, I'm the least sports guy. But like I watch Shoresy. Shoresy is a Canadian hockey sitcom. And then there was a clip of one of the Canadian players just pulling a Shoresy with an American player, just talking, because they had the mic. You could hear him. Like, I guess the mics are like, they had a hot mic and that you could hear this player. And he was just shitting on this American player and just literally just like calling him all kinds of names. Like, but funny, kind of like literally like a Shoresy, like, you know, just like, I don't even want to say it out loud, but like all these different things. I think he was talking about his family, just trying to instigate him to like throw down. And like you could even hear the mic. He was talking to his other Canadian player. He's like, I'm going to get this guy fired up and he's going to hit me. And then you're going to come around him and score the goal. So I don't know. It's hockey is a unique game. It's hilarious.
The smack talking and chirping in hockey is unique.
So like, let's go with that a little bit though. Like, so for a second, like, let's think. Right, like sport. If we're talking about sports, and I don't want to focus entirely about sports, but like sports is all about like us and them, right? Yep. I mean, that's what it is, right? So if it's two teams in the same country, one team is from one town or city or state, and the other team's from they're talking shit. Yeah. So like, there's always going to be that. So I don't think it's like politics need to be like. I don't think politics are the thing that are making like 2 teams from 2 different countries, those fans boo each other. Like, it's not politics, because they would be doing it, I think, already, because that's kind of like, I think, part of the game, right? It's just like when you watch UFC fights, like you have 2 fighters from 2 different countries, like you hear, you know, go in USA, or if it's a Brazilian player, if there's a lot of Brazilians in the audience, you hear them cheering their player. Both of those players live in the US. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you can, like, if that's just like a fundamental part of like humans. Like, we pick our tribes.
It certainly is. It is.
And then we just like vie for them. It's like if I went to the World Cup in another country and America's in the World Cup, we're gonna be rooting for America and probably be like, maybe Rob will shit talking the other team like from another country, right? I mean, it's not like we hate the other country. It's just like, it's kind of part of the game. Like, There you go. So I don't know. So part of it, I like in the sports dynamic. I just think, and I'm kind of like an alien. Like I don't watch sports. I'm not part of the community. I'm just like I beam down and I'm trying to make sense of things. I kind of feel like that's just part of the game, right? Like we do that. We do that in our own country, right? Like you see people on YouTube getting riled up at games because it's like not an Eagles fan is sitting next to a Giants fan and something kind of like goes off. They have a lot more in common than like someone from another country theoretically.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of when in the sports dynamic, it's just kind of part of the game. Maybe I'm wrong.
It is part of the game, but there's a difference when two friendly countries like Canada and United States tend to start booing each other's national anthems. That's
the
rare.
difference.
That doesn't happen.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean,
You're partially correct, Chris, but you're wrong in that the political undertones of then booing each other's anthems, that rarely happens. The shit talking during the game, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
But
so you're kind of you're pulling out of this specifically. You're diagnosing a larger problem based off of the one action of they were booing a time of kind of like it's sacred. There was already like a sense of disrespect.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly right.
Go ahead.
So, but but in terms of just like Eagles, Giants, like cities, it's like you said, they have more in common with each other than they actually would care to admit. But
I mean, they do.
I hate the Eagles. So
yeah,
I still hate the Eagles.
but again, it's like based off of like it's kind of nothing, right? It's just like that's part of the rivalry.
It's part of the
aspect.
game. Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
Yeah, you're right on that.
So I wanted to tackle patriotism first because I feel like that's the
yeah, bro, lead because this was something that you were thinking about. I don't want to. It's been on your mind.
I think since 9/11, patriotism has been wielded as like a tool by our government and just governments in general to get citizens to fall in place and to oppose and to not oppose like policies that they put in place. And I don't know what you guys feel with that particular piece, but I think it's not something that was done heavily up until World War One and Two. Then that went away, and then it pretty much reasserted itself after 9/11, which is understandable, but it just kind of like it was used to squash any dissent.
Okay, I think I disagree in some areas, but what do you got, Rob? Anything?
So, like, dissent in what way? Like, you can't be nationalistic or patriotic?
Okay, so I'll use this exact example. If you oppose the war on terror or you oppose the response to 9/11, then
all right, now I get you.
Yeah, then you're not patriotic.
Yeah.
So
you know Rob's thinking he's taking out the sunglasses.
Yeah. So well, now we're gonna get into the government. I think that's a agenda driven by the government to get everyone on side so they can take actions such as invading certain countries. So,
but here's the thing: patriotism and nationalism are two relatively new things. They haven't been around for centuries or thousands of years. It's only started in the 1880s. Well, 1870s, 1880s.
Can I push you real quick? Like, can
go
you
for it.
like what do you? I don't. Where are you pulling that from? Because I would immensely disagree with that.
Well, with the nation,
patriotism and nationalism is a relatively new phenomenon.
It is. There were no such things as nations or countries up until the 1800s.
I mean, but you're stretching it, I think, a little bit because then you're just saying that you can only be patriotic or nationalistic in the confines of a country. What about like a civilization?
The civilizations that usually tends to be like ethnicity or
Romans
or religion.
I mean, the Romans were not one ethnicity essentially.
in that time, were most of the people that were under Roman rule, did they actually like being under the thumb of Roman rule?
Some yes, some no.
I feel like most of the time when you're in a
Because think about it this way, it's like, well, no, because like some civilizations that the Romans sought to, some would say, can we be in? Because you get, right, if you're the biggest empire, right, there are benefits of being part of that, right? Protection. If someone attacks you, like you can say, hey, like I'm a citizen of Rome, you need to come and like protect us. And then there was other resources and tax money. So in some cases, I think, yes, I think you can find lots of examples where certain smaller civilizations were like, no, we're not going to fight you. We'll be part of you and benefit in that respect. And then in some cases, obviously, it's like if you were a more nationalistic, patriotic civilization, you'd say, go F yourselves. Like, we're going to die on our sword and you're going to have to kill us. Think of like when they went into Germany and tried to essentially colonize those Germanic peoples. That was like wholesale slaughter. They would rather all die than to bend the knee. So I think you see in that case, you see two sides. The Germans were maybe patriotic and nationalist is not the right word. They were unwilling to be assimilated into another culture because they had so much respect for their own or pride that they would rather die than become part of Rome. So, I mean, I don't know. So go ahead. I'm not trying to like nitpick, but
no.
I feel like it's like a very like
that's part of why I brought up this subject to have that back and forth.
Yeah, go. And then so that's the only. But you're right in the sense of like countries. Like countries is a relatively. You're right. Like that's a newish phenomenon, right? Or the state. I think more like states or like the country, the state is like a newer thing. Whereas before, you're right, it was more like
city states were.
Yeah, it would be like the tribe. The tribe became like a city. A city could become like a kingdom. Kingdom could become an empire. Right. Yeah. Go ahead. Continue.
Go ahead, Rob.
Sorry. I think what you're. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. I think what you're trying to say is the terminology, the word nationalism, that is relatively new. Mm-hmm. But I think Corvo's right. The act of like the pride and the act of wanting to like connect with people of your own, that's ancient, man.
It is.
But the term, the word patriotism and nationalism, that's new. Yes.
Joe, do you have the definition up still?
Let's see.
Because I'm curious. Because I mean, to your point, like I wonder. I'm trying
love and devotion to one's country.
Yeah. So I mean, in that sense, yeah, you're right. Like it's country. Country is a newish phenomenon. Yeah. So it's like that word specifically means country, which is, I mean, I'll give it to you. Like I don't, but yeah, I think that this. Right. If patriotism is dependent on a country, let's say the underlying sentiment of like us versus them, that I think is not a new phenomenon, right?
It's not.
Like my tribe versus your tribe, my people versus your people, my empire versus your empire. I mean, we're generalizing, but yeah. But again, so do you think? So from my perspective, then I think people like politicians or leaders, rulers have always used, like you said, to your point, have always wielded that us versus them as a means to like maintain power. Like I would agree with that, right? Because it's like all of you people, you be patriotic so that you go fight my battle over here with this king who I'm having a disagreement with. And he's going to send his people. I'm going to send my people. In reality, it's like a disagreement between them. But they're going to wield like patriotism, nationalism to kind of like get other people to fight the battle. Like I agree with that. I think that's not. Yeah, I agree with that. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm rambling.
Yeah, no. I also agree with that as well. But what isn't national? Joe, I'm going to ask you this. What isn't nationalism have more of a negative connotation? Like we're superior to everyone else.
Yes.
So I'm going to impose my will over you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like the dark, like I almost feel like, what do you think, Joe? Like, I kind of feel like patriotism and nationalism are like two sides of the same coin. And like patriotism is like maybe you wouldn't agree with this, but I think, let's say if we polled the audience, most people would. It's like patriotism is the more positive of the two. And then nationalism is like patriotism to its extreme.
Yeah. It's
Right?
the
It's
more
like
virtuous side of the two,
well, it's
patriotism.
like I love my country. I was born here. I see value in it. Like, who doesn't? Ideally, who hates where they live, right? Like, you could take it to the smallest. Like, when you wake up in your home, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it's not. I don't think it's a negative thing to dislike. Like, I think it's a positive to be like, this is my country. It has pros as cons, but it's mine. I live here. I like it. The negative is like mine is the best and yours is the worst.
Yeah, that's more
And
nationalism.
yeah, and like you don't have any rights compared to me. Like that kind of like I think that would be negative.
Most definitely.
But why do you think so? Why do you think both are negative?
I think both are used, are co-opted to get people to feel a certain way and not to have any opposition towards what's going on with their particular country or government. That's
Okay.
why I think both are.
Oh, so you think patriotism is used in like a subversive way to manipulate people?
Yes.
Because I think nationalism, flat out, by the very definition of it, because I also did some research contrasting them. You're supposed to wanna it is the belief that your home nation, your country, is superior and deserves to not rule, but and anytime there's any conflict, you're always siding with your own country, no matter what anyone does. I'm picking the side. Whereas patriotism is more, it's more like being proud of where you're from, building a community, supporting everyone that grew up in that same place. So um, I guess my question is, why do you think patriotism, specifically the more positive one, is being exploited? Like, where are you seeing that?
I've seen it just after 9/11, and I feel like
it's called the Patriot Act too, which is funny.
Which is
good point.
I mean, that's
a good point.
It's a shitty name for what that is, but yeah.
But that's why it's used that. I mean,
that's why
your
they
point,
use it. Yeah.
They use that for marketing purposes, right? Because patriot's good. It's good. Patriotism is good. Therefore, the act that's called Patriotism Act, like that's got to be good as well.
Yeah, and then they just surveilled us. So, but go ahead, Joe.
It's true. But because I'm with you on what you're saying. Like, I don't disagree.
In every war in the 20th and 21st centuries, patriotism has always been used to try to get people to jump aboard on the bandwagon of what that war was trying to accomplish and to squash any dissent from what was going on at that time. And it's just whatever positives that come from patriotism, like pride in one's community, I feel like it's usually overshadowed by pretty much coercion of that word, that feeling by leadership, by governments, by people who are in charge, people who have power.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think nothing you've said I really disagree with. Like, I don't think patriotism is inherently negative, but I would agree that it's often used as a weapon by people who are like in power, and especially power in the sense of like wielding government power. Like, I would agree with that. I mean, think about, we can even go before 9/11. We weren't really around, but think of the Cold War, right? That was definitely a Russia is bad, America is good. Very similar, like we need to be doing X, we need to be doing Y. Now, we weren't in an open war with them, but like I think you could see in the movies that were made, in like the media that was created, like they were trying to benefit from this like patriotic America is the hero mentality. Russia is the boogeyman, and like wield that kind of patriotic fervor to their advantage, right? And then again, like 9/11, same, right? We went into 2 wars that if they were to spark up again now, people I think would be much more asking a lot more questions and asking for a lot more receipts.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was, it was just like there's even the conspiracy regarding like, and I'm kind of speaking out of school, but like World War II and Pearl Harbor. There are those who say that that's a similar to like 9/11, where here's an event. It could have maybe been stopped or not been as bad. There's questions of if like people in power knew that something was coming. And then they, in a sense, used that attack, right, to go to war, like, and into a world war, into a massive war. So like it's kind of a similar vein, right? Like people are motivated by like love of country, but then there are those people who are in power that are going to use that to their advantage. Okay, now you guys are on board. Okay, everyone to the ships. We're going to go to war. And they're doing math and everyone else is like, just taken in by emotion.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that too, because it's basically a tool to galvanize people so you can take actions that the general public normally wouldn't be cool with, which is what happened post 9/11. Because if 9/11 doesn't happen, the domino effect of that was crazy.
Yeah.
In domestically and abroad as well.
So go ahead, Ron.
So what? I would ask you both of you a personal question. Do you feel patriotic about being an American?
Joe, you go first. You rebel.
Yeah. How do you feel about being American? Because I have my own feelings.
See, that's it. My thing is, I don't.
Dude, if Joe takes over, we're all gonna end up on the wall at some point, man. I'll be like, Commandant, I need Joseph Mark. I'm friends with him. I'm on his side. Please don't kill me. Go ahead. Sorry. I'm kidding. Anyone.
Yeah, I know.
Joe, you shouldn't be afraid of Joe. He will wield power well. He will be a righteous ruler.
I don't know about that. We'll get some shitty music.
No stand-up comedy.
No stand-up comedy.
Definitely no stand-up.
Tons of Marvel movies, which I don't mind.
I don't know about that anymore.
I mind it, and I definitely mind it. And you're gonna hear electro dance music all the time. No,
the Europeans will love it. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, it's gonna turn this into Germany.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basement house music. All right, good, but go ahead.
My thing is, I would actually push back against patriotism in the sense of a country. I think everyone has their tribe. Everyone lives in their town, their city. We could easily go back to just being city states. I don't see why that's so. My thing is, no, I do not feel proud to be an American. I'm proud to be a New Yorker. Like
Interesting.
I don't have this connection with someone from San Francisco or from Denver.
I have questions when you're done.
I have connections with people who are from New York, and to a lesser extent from the Northeast megalopolis, like people from Boston, or Philadelphia, because we have a shared
New Jersey. You don't like us?
Philly is the same thing as South Jersey.
Okay.
Further down the totem pole for Jersey, but still, the whole Northeast thing, I feel like I share more in common with them than someone from Atlanta or Idaho.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wouldn't disagree. I guess my question would be, because you have traveled overseas.
Mm-hmm.
Me and Rob were talking more in detail about this in another episode. How do you feel or how do you identify when traveling in another country?
Literally, as a New Yorker, and
really?
when I went to London, they note. Well, I don't have really much of a New York accent, which is kind of crazy. But the first thing I'll say is I'm from Brooklyn. I'm not from the United States. I'm literally from Brooklyn or from New York.
Interesting.
I feel like most people kind of say that. They kind of say what city they're from or what town they're from, not that they're an American. Or if I'm wrong, then
that's an American way to look at it.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what I was gonna say too.
Which is true because America is so big, compared to a lot of the other countries which are smaller. But from just my point of view, I see it more as a regional thing for me.
Like if you went to another country and you shook someone's hand, they're like, "Hey, what's your name?" "Oh, Joe." "Okay, where are you from?" You're gonna say, "I'm from Brooklyn."
Because the word Brooklyn is world renowned. That's why. Same thing with the Bronx. I don't have to say I'm from America. You say you're from the Bronx, they know you're from New York. They know you're from USA. The same thing with Brooklyn. Same thing with you with South Jersey. You know how big Italian American culture is.
Wait,
all you have to say is, well, it's not as big as the boroughs, but if you say you're from South Jersey, and
I wouldn't
abroad,
say that.
I was gonna say, where would you say you're from, Chris?
Yeah, I wouldn't say that. I'm just trying to think. I mean, I think when I was traveling overseas extensively, I said New York, but I would say from the U.S. I'm from New York because it's like U.S. New York. New York is just like, to your point, both your points. It is world renowned because it's in so much media that like automatically that's going to open up like a conversation. Oh, Statue of Liberty. Da, 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 da. I do think, to your point though, like I think it's an American thing of where, I guess why I asked you this is because how you perceive yourself versus how people perceive you are two different things. So I do think it's maybe I'm wrong, but like I do think a lot of Americans don't like for whatever reason it's become a trend. Like they don't see them. I'm not American. Like I'm me or whatever. But like it is curious. Like you do. I would assume this is from my perspective. You carry your Americanness in you, and if you go to other countries, they're gonna point it out. Like they're gonna know just by how you interact that you're an American.
Absolutely.
That's
and
true.
it's kind of like I think I talked to Rob about this. Other countries would not feel bad. Like if I'm an Italian, if I was an Italian, and I came to America. Where are you from? Italy. And then they might be more like I am Roman. I mean, maybe more specific, but like they don't have like a negative, or let's say like I'm going to use this word, self-hatred of being like Italian. Whereas I think Americans are more inclined to be like embarrassed that they're American, or like not identify as American, or, I'm from, you know what I mean? They avoid America and they go to like their city, or they're like, they kind of like niche it down.
So
But it
let
is
me ask
interesting.
you this question then.
Yeah.
You two have been to Italy. Italy is like the home of the city state. When you ask someone who from Italy where they're from, do they say like Sicily or Milan?
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
But that's because you're in their like you're in the country, so now you niche it down. Well, I already know you're Italy. You speak Italian. You're from it. I'm now Roman. Just like if I met someone in the U.S., where are you from? I don't say I'm from the U.S. I say I'm from like South Jersey, or I'm from outside of Philadelphia, or I'm from New York, or what. You know what I mean? Like then I'm gonna be more specific. But if I was in another country, I'm gonna probably start with U.S. and then niche it down to, I'm on the East Coast of the country, or I'm from New York, or I'm from wherever.
What I'm trying to get at is, with Italy, I felt like there's like a certain distinction between northern Italy and southern Italy.
Big time.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of Italians, they kind of choose one or the other. I honestly don't know because I haven't been there. But would you, particular Chris, or both of you, since you've been there, do you think that there's a national identity, or is it really more a regional thing? Because I see it all over the place. When I've gone to England, it's like a southern and northern kind of like rift.
Yeah.
And same thing in Italy's. I don't know. Maybe I'm going off path here, but
I mean, go ahead, Rob. I mean, I have a thought, but
Yeah,
you take it.
there's definitely, I would say, internally within the country of Italy, there is a rift between the north and the south. So the south, you have like Napoli and Sicily, which has a completely different lifestyle than Milan, Florence, Venice. It's more like artsy and creative there. It's a little more blue collar down by the end of the boot. But if you're abroad, I think Chris is right. Like, you wouldn't say I'm Southern Italian. You would just say you're Italian.
Yeah.
So I think domestically within Italy there is a big divide, and there's like a rivalry, but internationally now everyone still identifies as Italian. Even if you want to go back to sports, when the Italian football team plays, everyone is Italian. Doesn't matter if you're from anywhere, Torino or Napoli, which would normally be rivals. There, everyone comes together.
And I think you don't have to go very far to see that. Like in America, there, like you said, Joe, there's a big difference between like someone who grew up in Iowa or Ohio and like someone who grew up in LA. They're like almost different countries. They speak the same language, but like culturally, they're like very different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But like if those two people were to meet up in, I don't know, Madrid, Spain at a bar, and they heard each other speaking, there's going to be an instant camaraderie between those two. Like that's my experience, like 100%. Like you're from the same country, you actually have a lot more in common than you think once you're outside of the confines of that place. Like if there was a fight, I would think they're gonna be like an instant ally, maybe rightfully or wrongfully. Like who knows if they should be, but like I think you're gonna see a camaraderie. And also like other countries, like if two guys from the UK, there's a fight that pops off of another country, most likely they're going to become allies to each other. I would almost guarantee it. A bunch of Italians are together in another country and something happens, there's an instant camaraderie amongst them. Like I guarantee that would happen, because there's kind of like, it makes sense. Like you actually have a lot more in common with them than you do with theoretically anyone else, just by the fact of like you have a common culture, you have a common language, and so forth. So that's why I think like that patriotism is kind of like hard, like it is kind of like just a natural human reaction. Like
it is.
We're kind of related, even if we're not related. If in our country we were enemies at war, we're going to be allies, right? And that's why you see like, you watch like Band of Brothers and stuff like that, where you have like Americans going to World War II, and then you see them kind of coming together, and you have like, you have people from the country, the Hicks. You have the guy from like Queens, New York, has his New York accent, the city guy. You have people who are like racist. Now they're alongside, like, let's say an African American, and it's like they're very different. They might not like each other in their own country, but now they're in the heat of battle, and let's say like trying to go into Germany, and they become like a band of brothers. So I think that kind of like shows you just like the psyche of people. Like I think that's how people operate, right? Like inside your country, you might hate each other, but outside your country, well, it's like we have a lot more in common. So at least for now, we're allies, and if not allies, maybe even friends. Yeah, we're kind of going all over the place, but anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's true, because I mean, they call I don't even think, I'm not going to say the word obviously, but there's a term for people from southern Italy that we all know from the organized crime movies. Did you know that, Joe?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah,
I mean, Sicilians are not there's a lot of derogatory
between northern, there's derogatory insults between northern and southern Italians. But like you said, when you're abroad internationally, Italians, they still bond together because you still have similarities culturally.
You speak the same language for the most part. You have kind of the same food that you eat. Like, it's gonna be but to like round it off, like I do think your point is valid, Joe. I think that innate quality in humans is often used for someone else's benefit. Like that, I 100% agree. Like for example, I live behind a school, like a middle school. So I don't even know, like fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, whatever, up to eighth grade. Every morning they do the Pledge of Allegiance, right? And like, I don't know, until I came back into this area, like I haven't heard the Pledge of Allegiance in a long time. And it is kind of a weird thing. Like they're pledging like they're not thinking about it, but like at a state school, they're having their students pledge, like, we say things, but we don't think about the words. I am pledge allegiance. I pledge my life to the flag. I pledge my life to the government. I will sacrifice myself for the government. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're pledging allegiance, like how a servant would pledge his life to a king and behave on the behest of the king. If the king is unhappy, off with his head. And they're kind of entering into that relationship. It is kind of an interesting thing that, like, that is something that someone decided to be part of schools, and maybe it's like a good thing in its origin, but that's all kind of contingent on is the government operating in, are they someone I should pledge allegiance to? If you had a quote unquote good government, then maybe yes. But what about when your government is like tyrannical or is doing evil things, etc.?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, but again, like, that's patriotism. Like, you got, I'm pledging allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, right? Like, it is interesting. Like, when you hear it, you're like, this is how you start to brainwash people and indoctrinate them into kind of like thinking that the government is right all the time, which we're finding out right now specifically, like, it's not.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting you said it's middle school, so it's younger children,
and you do it since
very impressionable. They're very impressionable, so like, we all know the words to that. And but I'm more with Joe. I identify more as a New Yorker than I would say that I'm an American. That was a good point. Now, the next thing I want to explore is, let's talk nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
So has America gone too far in its nationalism in terms of current, like, foreign policy? Joe is probably the best
Kick it to
person.
Joe is like,
yeah. And like the current regime we have now.
Well, even span it out. Go like over the last, like,
or I was gonna
5 years,
or the last couple administrations.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's not even this administration; it's the previous administration too. I feel like they fall in line with whatever the opposing side goes with, just so that they don't seem weak. But yes, I feel that there's this, like, I'm trying to figure out the best word to say.
Can you give an example of that previous statement, like a tangible example?
Okay, so basically, our government's treatment of, like, China, and how we need to, and whether this was through the Trump era or the Biden era, just treating China as the boogeyman.
Okay.
And no matter what came through, whether it's geopolitical or whether it's economics, treating China as a boogeyman, and that we're a better nation than China because we value
democracy
and human rights, when we kind of don't, compared to them. It's kind of hypocritical, and it's the literal definition of nationalism. We are not better than one nation because of certain things that we do, and oftentimes we do the same things that they do.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay.
I would agree with that, but I wanna pick some things apart there. What about not just like economic relationships? What about, let's go back to the Team America movie. The fact that we always have to get involved with any foreign conflict.
So I think that's really more of like a economic thing. I think
it's part of it. All right.
Yeah, because there's so many, like, multinational corporations that have their tentacles in all these other countries, that we need to protect their financial interests. So we need to go in and actually meddle with with them, whether it's like certain things like natural resources or just an investment in terms of some kind of like real estate thing. I feel like the US government feels that they have to jump in because of the repercussions financially if they don't.
All right, so you think it's more of a financial interest than America wanting to just like flex its muscles and say we're the dominant force in the
I
world?
I think it's always been financial, but I think to a certain group there will always be that trying to kind of flexing their muscle to the rest of the world where we're the dominant force.
Yeah, so sometimes I feel we're like the bodybuilder in the competition that's just like doing all the all the moves. Well, the what is it like competitive?
Posing.
Yeah. The
They're doing
pose.
their
That's what we do. We do it all the time. We're doing it in 2 places right now,
yeah.
uh, or 3 now. But yeah, so no, I would disagree a little bit, Joe. I think it's more of a it's finances definitely have a part of it. Always follow the
Hmm.
money,
I
but
think with Ukraine is definitely finances
why is that?
because of the gas and oil that's in the Crimea area that was already taken over by Russia. There's
Mhm.
like a huge like gas and oil pipeline there, and then Trump already like alluded it to before with the minerals that are in Ukraine. There's a lot of rare earth minerals there, and they want to be able to control it. And and Ukraine, I think, grows the most grains or wheat out of any country outside of the U.S.
Yeah, I think they're the breadbasket of
of Europe.
Africa actually too,
Uh, yeah,
Wow.
and
and
China.
Europe. Yeah, they produce a lot of produce.
So yeah, they're trying
Mm.
to keep things financially ju- like justifiable so that things don't go crazy in all these other parts of the world.
Yeah, so it's more to stop. Is it more for America to have like at least some kind of control, or is it more of it stopping Russia from having that control?
I
Could be
think it's
both.
I think it's both.
All right.
I think it's definitely both.
So you think we're actually scared of Russia? That's probably might be the ultimate question that I have here.
I don't think that the U.S. is
I
scared of
don't
Russia.
think we should be.
I I think the U.S. is scared that Europe would be afraid of Russia, and they don't want Europe to be afraid.
Mm.
Yes.
But once again, I still think it's like a majority financial interests.
Well, those things are all kind of connected, right? Money, you can't
It's a web. Yeah.
disconnect money from power and like they're the same thing and influence,
And
right?
yeah,
You
exactly.
don't really pursue one without pursuing the others. But go ahead. I have my own thoughts, but go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, but so the last I'll land it here. I think I mean this may be the most nationalistic thing I'll say. I think if we went head to head with Russia, they would have no chance. They
Oh,
would
I
have
don't
no
think that's
chance.
I
true.
Yeah.
disagree. I
Yeah, I
I
don't think that's
disagree.
true.
that was right. I'm no expert.
Yeah.
I want to hear the reasons why though. I think
So
we go ahead.
so go ahead. No, finish your thought, and then I'll talk.
So and what also once again I could be wrong. I'm not a
Yeah, just
politician. Yeah.
yeah.
I don't think we should be Europeans caretakers. They
Yeah,
should be able to take care of themselves.
that I agree.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I think you spoke. Yeah, there's a lot there to kind of
Yeah.
unpack. And yeah, you're right. Like we're just kind of like onlookers watching, the
Right.
world stage and trying to make sense of it. Um, I do think it's interesting that like Russia has, like we ended the Cold War ended, Soviet Union was the boogeyman, but like I do think that play never ended, right? It just changed names to Russia. But I think it like there was a deep seated, whatever you want to call it, fear, animosity, or okay, it's wounded, we need to destroy it, that we've seen over the last like, I mean, our whole lifetime, right? Because pretty much the fall of the wall, I think was it like 85, 86,
89,
89.
90,
So our
89,
whole
90.
life, right? That play has still been going on, right? Because and you can see it, right? Russia is still always been the boogeyman, right? All of our lifetimes, whenever you watch a movie, there's a good chance until terrorism became big that it was a Russian that was the enemy, and like that shows
and
you
the
that
Germans
and the Germans,
both
really
more Russia though,
more Russians, right? Because
Yeah.
Germany as a nationalistic Nazi empire didn't exist, right? They're gone. But like Russia and like
you're
the
right.
enemy being like Russian spies and right, like our parents grew up like practicing like bomb drills, right? Like that's not that long ago. And I think that like a lot of the people who right in our lifetime, a lot of the people who live through like in the government who lived through or were connected with the Cold War, they're still in power. So like it wasn't like they just closed the book on that chapter. I think they've been still writing it, right? So like our Cold War became just slightly colder, right? Where we push, we prod, and you know, we've been trying. I think we've been trying to like Russia's always been had a bullseye on it from I think our government's perspective. Like I'm of the mind that like the Ukraine conflict, like we've been kind of using them as like a proxy to continue to throw arrows at Russia. Like I'm of that mind, and people can disagree with it, but like I'm of the mind that in some cases we were the provoker. Like, right? Like, and again, you can go and you can find conversations where like previous American politicians kind of like made promises, like Ukraine, we're not going to touch it. It's going to be like a no man's land. Like that's your border. Leave them alone, but we're not going to cross into that. We're not going to bring the UN. We're not going to bring them into the UN. We're not going to put missiles there. And like when you look at it from a Russian perspective, I'm not Russian, but like if someone wanted to, like what happened when the Russians put missiles on Cuba? Dude, we were about to go to war. And like, but the flip side of that, when we try to do that to them, it's like, oh, we're surprised that they are going to respond militarily. So I feel like we've been kind of like setting them up to go to battle. And then the downside of this whole Ukraine conflict, from what I've heard, is like they've had all of this time to industrialize and practice like all of the arts of war that we haven't really had to practice in a long time. And like what I'm hearing at least is that like if we were to have a hot war, they're very much they can produce the missiles they need, they can produce the military equipment they need at a fast rate. And the negative of going to like the positive of going to war is you have soldiers, the ones that survive are now militarily ready. Whereas we haven't had a real hot war where like that was a threat to the homeland in a long time, and we have no weapons apparently. Like we are not able to produce at the rate that even is needed for Ukraine. So I yeah, it's kind of like when Trump is kind of saying like, why are we provoke like this needs to be done. There's like a lot of value to that because it's like, why are we going to push someone to a point where there's either the threat of nuclear holocaust or there's another world war? Like, what is the stratagem? Like, if you care about human lives, like peace is important. So like maybe I'm kind of diverging, but it is interesting that like how many wars America has kind of like instigated over the last like 50 years.
A lot.
And it's like you're not on the side of the angels if like you are starting wars. Like people die. Like the whole Ukraine thing to me is like so sad. Like literally like a generation, like they're going to have problems that last our whole lifetime because they're just all their young people are dead.
Yeah, it's
and like
terrible.
Yeah, so I don't know. Go ahead.
So to answer your question, Rob,
yeah,
I don't think U.S. has a chance. If you look at the history of warfare in like Russia, there's no way that the U.S. could invade a land that large with such hostile terrain. If they try to invade like during the fall or winter, the U.S. has no chance.
Yeah. Germans died. Napoleon died.
Yeah. So but what about the reverse? What about Russia trying to invade the U.S.?
Also, no chance. I don't.
So it's the same.
No,
so that washes out.
Yeah, and there's no. Basically, there would be no point.
Yeah.
With the artillery piece, the U.S. is selling all of their weapons to Israel. Just all of them. So
so we're out of weapons.
We don't have any weapons, and it would have to take a ton of time to restock.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have the artillery to put into place to try to have a hot war. And I just feel like we're too overly reliant on technology as well.
Yeah, I think maybe Russian. I don't know what their cyber warfare is like, but I feel like it would be better than the U.S. from the little that I know.
Yeah, I mean, dude, I like the question I always ask myself, and this is like to your point, I think, Joe, and you're bringing up this subject, which I think is important. Like, I think patriotism is a good feeling. Like, I think it's good that people have that, like a love of their homeland, a love of their country, because there are times where people are going to come and try to take that away, and if you have to have that, that is going to inspire you to like be willing to fight back. But I completely agree. Like, that's when you are, the David in the David Goliath scenario. In our case, it's like this is an empire, and I do think sometimes the governments have used patriotism to essentially feed like nefarious goals.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like all the stuff in the Middle East, what's going on in Ukraine, making Russia the boogeyman, like calling Putin, like how many politicians have run essentially on that Russia is the enemy, and like, not saying that they're good, but again, one, that's a lot of people. So how can you say who's good? You know what I mean? You can't say what's good and what's bad. It's millions of people. And two, it's like I always ask myself, what is the goal? Like, what is the goal? You're gonna conquer Russia and take them over? Like, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Right? Like, so then what is the underlying reason? And sometimes I think there is no reason.
No, there is a reason. I think it's political. I honestly think that they did get hacked, and they're using Russia as a way to defend themselves against people who think that the left wing, or really left center government, is inept, and they lost an election because they weren't good enough. But they're using Russia as that boogeyman, so they're gonna piggyback the Ukraine situation to keep hammering home that Russia's the boogeyman.
But I guess my point is that
they caused them to lose an election.
But I guess my point is that, like, that's the recent chapter in a longer book, right? Russia's been the boogeyman for our whole lifetimes, right? And that was even when that's like both right and left.
Mm-hmm.
So
but there was
the story hasn't changed. Just who's telling the story is slightly changing.
There was a stretch where it wasn't, like the 90s and early 2000s. There wasn't really any of that strife. It's, to me, is really when Putin tried to take over Crimea. And the funny thing is, the U.S. didn't do anything about it. The Obama administration did nothing. They just let them take over a sovereign nation.
Well, what about
as the election of 2015 came around and they got hacked, now they started to push for Russia to.
Well, yeah, we can go down the conspiratorial rabbit hole, because wasn't there also an election in the Ukraine where a more pro-Russian leader was nominated, and then there was a revolution that essentially people have said was American CIA led to topple that? I mean, that was pre 2016. That was like, I think, 2014. So it might not have been in the public eye, but you know what I mean? Now that we're seeing what's coming out of like the depths of the government, like there are tentacles out. This is the largest government in the world. Like, there are tentacles operating like an octopus, like autonomously. Like, and things might not be in like the media yet, but like there are agents operating on the behest of America, doing all sorts of things.
Yeah, of
and
course.
I guess, and right, the question is just like, what is your point? What is the goal? Because it's not for me. It's not for like the American citizen. Like, instigating wars is not for my benefit. If anything, that's like to the detriment of me and any children I might have in the future. So then who's the winner in these scenarios? Anyway, go ahead, Rob.
Because it could be an ego thing.
I
Good
think
question.
it's definitely ego, but I still think it's control over resources too.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. But I do have a question. So obviously we burned a lot of bridges over the last couple decades. If it's not 1v1 and let's say that there is some kind of a like there's the world is involved, do you think the US could attract more allies than Russia? I feel like that would be a yes too, but I could be wrong. That we could raise more allies than Russia would. Because see, it's because we've done a good PR job of painting Russia as to be the evil villain, as we've done for years. So internationally around the world. So what do you guys think, Joe?
I don't know.
Because yeah, we've burned a lot of bridges. Yeah, I
But
know.
even if we didn't burn the bridges, even if this government didn't align itself, this current government didn't align itself with Russia, the current group that's aligned with Russia has vastly more manpower. It's India, China, Russia, that whole BRICS, like
Yeah.
that whole BRICS conglomerate. That's like half the world. So I just don't know. Even if Europe came along, like the EU tagged along with the United States, I don't think that's enough.
I mean, I think the BRICS thing is kind of not. It exists, but I don't think it's as powerful
It's
as
for
it.
financial reasons to switch over.
Yeah, it's to have a different reserve currency.
Yes,
But I
but
think that. Go ahead.
I
Sorry.
think if there was a hot war, I think those alliances would join each other.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't know. I can't predict anything. I don't. I do think we're living in a more interconnected world than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
So like mutual reliance is like even between enemies, because think about it, like if Russia,
China
you
and the
produce oil,
U.S.
you need to find, if you produce things, you need to find people to buy it, right? And like to your point, like the market is that is the thing that's like the most common of all of us, right? Like if you have an like China, right? They have an overabundance of output. They need markets for that output. America is one of the largest.
Mm-hmm.
Russia is also one of the largest. So like from Chinese perspective, it's like I want to sell these goods because that brings in income for us, right? And if I make them my enemy, I've lost a huge market. So I do
Mm-hmm.
think like um, that kind of keeps us all to some degree like united. But if a hot war did pop off, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think you would see like Iran is going to join with Russia. Russia is already allies with China. I don't think China actually wants like a physical war. I
No,
think
I
their
don't
whole
think they do.
goal is like economic warfare. Like
Mm-hmm.
we'll make the best products or the cheapest products, and we'll make the world our customers. And then by default, we kind of own you because you need us, right? You become dependent on us. Um, I think China's kind of like, guys, just like, don't pop off. Come on, everything is going
Yeah.
good. Like, be quiet. Um,
You could spar,
yeah,
but let's not really try
yeah. I
to.
mean, kind of like, shut up. We're working over here. Like, we're making moves. Like, you're just, that's why it's like when I think China, China is allies with what is it, North
North
Korea,
Korea, yeah.
Yeah.
and it's like they'll make kind of memes of whenever the North Korean does something that Kim Jong does something stupid. It's like you can just picture the Chinese like leader being like, oh, "Come on, man! Like, you're making it difficult for me to be your ally." Like, bro,
Yeah.
we're not trying to do no. Why are you trying to threaten shooting off missiles?
Yeah.
We're trying to sell our dinky stuff to Amazon people. Like, shut up.
Yeah, we're trying to
Um,
make chips for computers and
yeah.
stuff and phones.
So here, like, as we're coming up on time, like, what? Let's like look to the future a little bit. Because we've kind of gone from patriotism, nationalism, and also how that's kind of influenced like the world scene as we see it right now.
It
We didn't
has a
even
heavy
talk about
influence.
Israel or like the Middle East.
Yeah, it has a heavy influence. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, do you see any trends that would make you positive of like the world scene, or you have more of a negative perspective on, let's say, like the next couple years, and not even like politics is definitely part of it, but like, what do you think? What is your gut feeling? Anyone?
I'll go first. So I think I don't think we're on the precipice of something like really dangerous, but from what I feel, just like living my own life, researching what I do, scouring the dark corners of the internet, I think, I believe it's this what we just talked about needs to be talked about more. There's not enough people that are aware or educating themselves about this, myself included. I need to do more research about what's going on because I think like you used the word pop off. Shit could get real at any point. Um, but now I would say as of right now, currently, we're still kind of cool. Everyone and what helps is the internet. Everyone can communicate with each other, so it's from all corners of the planet. So that does help because I think if you didn't have that constant stream of communication, we would be in it would the hot war would have already started. Um, but we're good for now. I would say my bottom line is we're good for now, but we need to be wary. Caution is necessary.
All right, that's cool. What do you got, Joe?
I don't think there's going to be a major conflict unless
Joe, positive. I love it.
Unless there's like a huge economic like meltdown, because I feel like economic meltdowns are like a breeding ground for authoritarianism. So
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't see it. I think there's going to be a lot more isolationism. Uh, I think COVID kind of showed how if you have an over reliance on another nation for certain things, then if something happens, you're screwed.
Yeah.
So a lot of these countries are starting to pull back and try to self invest in their own things, like their own military, their own production of heavy materials, their own production of food. So I feel like if there's anything that's going to come about, it's going to be more isolationism.
So that you just completely detaching yourself from the world scene.
Not completely detaching, because that
No,
in
I don't
today's
think you
world that's
can.
not going to happen.
Yeah.
But to pull back more than before.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think you're already, I mean, it's not even a secret, right? Like, there's definitely a push towards like moving a lot more of manufacturing into the
Mm-hmm.
U.S., especially manufacturing of like key things like medicine, right? A lot of that's outsourced. Um, Philippines, for example, produces a lot. I think a lot of our medication, and I think we even saw not even with COVID, but there was like a hurricane, and certain medications were the quantity was cut down. So I do agree with that, which I think is a net positive.
And
It's not a negative.
not only like manufacturing too, but if you look at like Germany or even just Europe in general, just like shutting down of immigration or illegal migration, it I can see it's just pushing it towards that trend,
Oh, I think
more like
100%.
pulling in as opposed to opening up.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a natural reflex, right? Where there, I mean, if take your numbers, however you want to take them, but like we have a lot of illegal migration that took place over, let's say, a decade, right? So like, to some degree, unchecked, and I think a natural response or reflex to that is you're going to see it's like inertia, right? An opposite and equal reaction. That's why I think like not nationalism, let's say, but like what would be the opposite of isolationism? Joe, what would be the word for that?
And I don't know the term.
Globalism?
Probably.
Okay, so let's just use that for lack of a better word. I think it's like there is like a natural like balancing act that I think happens whether we can explain it or not, where it's like if you go in the direction of, let's say, globalism for lack of a better word, eventually there's kind of a reaction to that, and then you go into isolationism. And I would imagine if we looked at history, you could find like
Mm-hmm.
this ping pong back and forth, right? Um, like just like I think you can see, it's not uncommon that governments and countries go from liberalism to conservatism, back to liberalism, back to conservatism, and like there's this natural, I think, a natural flux. If you look at it over, if you were to chart it, I think right now we're kind of in that constricting, right? Like even from just like a sheer economic standpoint, we've outsourced a lot of our needs to other markets, and we have seen also that there's some negatives of that in certain scenarios. And now I think you're going to see a constricting, like you described, of like, okay, we're going to start moving some of this back in, and we're going to cut the valve on certain things. My hope, I mean, yeah. So anyway, my hope, I don't even think it's a prediction.
Mm-hmm.
My hope is that we have some some fires get at the very least not like put out. Like we're no longer feeding them, right? Like if you think about like the Ukraine thing, if we continue to feed it, can become a world war. That can like that could happen. If we continue to feed like into the Middle East conflicts, like we're gonna get more terrorism.
That's a huge problem.
Right? If we continue to feed in like military antagonism with China, like there's gonna be naturally a conflict. So like my hope is that Trump or whoever else in the future like just kind of stops feeding these things, right? And kind of works on like maybe I'm more nationalistic actually, like maybe that's a better word, but isolation works on like let's fix the problems in our own country and stop feeding these exterior things and like strengthen our own systems. Maybe a generation from now we'll go back out and start feeding, starting fires again. But like I would hope in the next 10 years we don't. Like let's go work on the subways in New York City. Like, you know what I mean?
The infrastructure.
Why are we like having conflicts or like spending money in like, I don't know, some random places in the world? Like, dude, there's subways in New York City that are shitty. Work on that, right? Make sure people have jobs. Like work on our own country before we're like, I don't know, saving the world in some other part of the world. I think we need to stop being like the policeman.
Yep. Totally agree.
That Team America, baby. I love that, Chris. Well said. You said it way better than but I feel exactly the same way. We're good. I think it's salvageable. The solutions are there, but it can go left at any time with all these like spots around the world.
Dude, if they keep instigating, like if someone gets their finger on the button and just does something in Ukraine, like dude, that could pop. Like, why are we even like pumping our chest up against people who have nuclear weapons? Right? Like some of the like the even just the language used in politics, it's like, dude, those are big words. Like you are starting fights. Like you can't just say things and there'd be no consequences. Like some people, when you say things, they take what you say literally and they're going to respond to it. Right. And I kind of feel like especially American politics, some of the things that people get off saying, I'm like, dog, like that is, it's like a fight, right? It's like, if you see people like talking shit, like in someone's face saying all these things, it's like the only reason you're comfortable to do that is either one, you know how to fight really well, or you feel like you're so comfortable that no one would ever try to lay hands on you.
It's all theater, though. It's all, and the thing is,
until you're performing with an actor who doesn't realize he's an actor,
exactly,
and he's like, no, I'm an emperor.
Yep.
This is it. Like, we're gonna go to war now, and that's why I feel like when they do that with Putin, I'm like, for better or worse, I'm not making any moral judgment. I think most politicians are the sin eaters of the world, right? Like they all have blood on their hands. So you have to look at them as what they are. In our country, this whole idea of like the peaceful leader, the Mother Teresa, all of these politicians run on that. That has been like the model that people have run on for our whole lifetime. I go to church. I'm a family man. I'm a good husband. Like, here's a picture of me talking to this preacher. Here's I'm going to, speak to the Dalai Lama. I'm a good person. When in fact, like, that all politicians have signed off on people being murdered. So like Putin is kind of like, no. you know how you read the history books and you read about warlords and kings and Genghis Khan? Yeah, I'm that. And it's like, to a lot of the Mongolians, there's still statues of Genghis Khan. They liked him, right? And I think that is the disconnect. Like, you're not talking to another American politician who like puffs up their chest and says things. You're talking to Genghis Khan. For better or worse, I'm not making a moral thing. I'm just saying he's Genghis Khan. He's a warlord. Like, he don't feel any qualms about killing people or going to war. He might even enjoy it. So like, why are you picking fights with that type of person?
Yeah, I agree. Like,
just keep Genghis Khan in Mongolia. Like, that should be your hope. Like, just stay over there.
Let him do his thing over there. Yeah,
right.
People that'll like don't mess with people that walk the walk.
Correct. Exactly. Yeah. Like when the guy's got cauliflower ears in the bar, don't talk shit to him.
That's perfect example. Yeah.
Chris, just to piggyback on one little thing you said, I don't think the U.S. is ever going to fully pull within, because they don't want to cede control of to China. They don't want to do it. For various reasons. So
that's a good point.
That's not going to
happen. Yeah, that's a good point. All right, guys. Any final thoughts? This was interesting. Thank you, Joe, for picking this topic.
It's good. It made me want to take on more of some more research projects here. I got to do.
It all came
I love how
from hockey.
Yeah, I love how this all came, because the U.S. Canada 2 games were so popular, and people are like saying, "Oh, I'm going to become a ice hockey fan now." No, you're not. You're going to forget about it after a week. They already have. This the 24-hour news cycle just
done.
Chewed it out and spit it out. Yeah, but I'm impressed by both of your knowledges of like geopolitics, especially Joe. Joe is more well versed. I wish we should do a whole show about like world politics, and you got to drive the bus, Joe.
Oh, fuck me.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, Joe, I would enjoy. I think right now, since there is so much, we'll talk about this on the air. I actually, maybe this would be a fun project for both of you to work on. Would be like, I think it would be cool to have like a Doge episode, a recurring Doge episode, where it's just like,
to town.
This is a summary of like what like this is how I would want to do it. Right, it'd be like a summary of up to that date. This is all the things that have been released by Doge. And then you can we can talk about it. Maybe you have difference of opinions of if that's a good thing, if it's a bad thing, if it's being misconstrued. But I think it would be cool to like, even just for ourselves, like this is going to be for the next like number of years, probably. Mm-hmm. Like if every month we did one episode and it's like, okay, this is like an update on Doge and talked about it. Cause I think there's a lot, like I'm not as informed as I should be, considering like these things impact us. Like they're going to impact the next 40 years of our lives. And like, to my detriment, I'm not as informed as I probably should be. So it'd be fun, I think, to do something like that if you're interested.
Yeah, same.
All right.
And but I would leave that to you guys to do that research.
Oh no, I'm on it. Anything investigative research.
Yes.
I'm your man.
Yeah.
And anything against oligarchs, I'm all for.
Yeah, and Joe, you just have to I need you to have a balanced take on this. Like there's good and bad, but just because someone has a lot of money doesn't mean they're inherently, I don't know, never mind. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, welcome. We're happy you're here. Hit the like and subscribe button, and catch us next week for another episode.
Peace out.